less than 0.1% of the prison population. Yet the Aryan Brotherhood is responsible for 18% of every murder ever committed behind bars in America. That's not a gang. That's a death machine with a membership card. Today, we ranked the 13 men who built it, ran it, and turned prison walls into a corporate headquarters for organized murder. From the soldiers who swung the knife to the commissioners who only had to say the word. Who surprised you the most? And who do you think deserved that #1 spot? Drop it in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. If you want us to keep pulling back the curtain on the world's most dangerous organizations, subscribe. You won't regret it. 13 names. One body count that defies belief. Let's begin. Number 13. John Greschner, on October 6, 1983, at USP Leavenworth, Kansas. Richard Rhino Andreasen walked into a prison stairwell and never walked out. Court records say he was hit with a metal pipe, then attacked with homemade knives by John Greschner and Ronnie Criswell. Prosecutors later tied the killing to Aryan Brotherhood power, gambling debt, and orders from Barry the Baron Mills. So no, this was not just another prison fight. This was how the Brotherhood did business. John Greschner was not the loudest name in the Aryan Brotherhood, but that may be the point. He was a federal commissioner, one of the men who helped build the AB's National Prison Network from the inside. Before that, he already had a violent record out of Minnesota. Robberies, shootings, aggravated assault, and prison attacks. By 1977, Barry Mills saw him as useful, dangerous enough to enforce rules, smart enough to help run the operation. At Leavenworth, Greschner and Criswell claimed self-defense, saying Andreasen was armed and trying to take over their gambling business. The jury did not buy it. In 1984, Greschner was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He received 2 consecutive life sentences. But what puts him in this ranking is bigger than one killing. Greschner later described how the Aryan Brotherhood used taxes, coded messages, outside contacts, recruitment, and money channels to keep power moving through prison walls. Some gang leaders are feared because they swing the knife. Greschner was feared because he helped design the system that told the knife where to go. Number 12. Michael Thompson. On February 13, 1983, in Northern California, Richard Barnes was found dead with 3 close-range shots to the back of his head. He was not a gangster. He was not an informant. He was the father of Stephen Barnes, a man who had testified against the Aryan Brotherhood. That is the kind of message the Brotherhood wanted the world to understand. Michael Lynn Thompson, known as Iron Mike, was already serving life before he became one of the Brotherhood's most dangerous insiders. In Orange County, he was convicted for the murders of Vaudra Butch Nunley and Rue Steele. Prosecutors said the victims were lured into a late-night setup, attacked, driven away, and buried behind Thompson's home. One of them was reportedly still alive before a co-defendant finished the killing. That was not prison gossip. That was the criminal record he carried into the yard. Inside California prisons, Thompson rose to the Brotherhood's California Council, meaning he was not just following orders. He was close to the men deciding who got punished, who got protected, and who got erased. Then came the Barnes case. Court records placed Thompson around the leadership circle discussing retaliation against Stephen Barnes. Thompson later claimed he opposed hitting innocent family members, but Richard Barnes still ended up dead. After that, Thompson broke from the Brotherhood and testified against Curtis Price. That made him a marked man. Michael Thompson was ruthless enough to rise inside the Aryan Brotherhood, smart enough to know where the bodies were buried, and dangerous enough that when he flipped, even the Brotherhood had reason to fear him. Number 11. Edgar, the Snail Hevle. On August 9, 1989, inside USP Lompoc, California, Aryan Brotherhood member Arva Lee Ray was not attacked by an enemy gang. He was marked by his own people. According to federal court records, AB leaders believed Ray had become a problem, disrespectful, unreliable, and bad for the Brotherhood's image. In that world, that was not a warning. That was a death sentence. One of the names tied to the order was Edgar Wesley Hevle, known as the Snail. Hevle was not famous because he was the loudest man in the yard. He was dangerous because he operated in the part of the gang most people never see, the command structure. Court records described him as a long-time Aryan Brotherhood member, active since the early 1980s, and at one point, part of its leadership council. The Ray killing showed how cold that system was. Prosecutors said the plan first involved poison, then heroin, to make the death look like an overdose. When that failed, Ray was strangled. That was not a fight. That was an internal execution with paperwork-level planning. Hevle's name also surfaced in the Brotherhood's wider conflict with the DC Blacks. After violence at Lewisburg and Marion, court records say Hevle sent word that white inmates should get ready. Outside prison, that sounds vague. Inside Aryan Brotherhood language, it meant make weapons and prepare for retaliation. On August 28, 1997, at USP Lewisburg, Frank Joyner and Abdul Salam were killed. Hevle was later convicted in the massive federal RICO case against the Aryan Brotherhood and received life sentences. Hevle was not just muscle. He was proof that in the Aryan Brotherhood, one quiet order could move through a prison system and leave bodies behind. Number 10. William Sylvester. On October 7, 2011, inside California State Prison, Sacramento, Ronald Richardson walked onto the yard and became part of an Aryan Brotherhood lesson. Federal prosecutors said William, Billy from Norco Sylvester, helped stab Richardson repeatedly, not because of a simple prison beef, but because Richardson belonged to a rival white prison group that refused to respect Brotherhood control. That is the part that matters. In the AB world, violence is not just anger. It is paperwork. It tells everyone who gives orders, who pays taxes, and who gets removed when they do not fall in line. Sylvester was already serving life in California, but prison did not shut him down. Prosecutors later described him as a high-ranking Aryan Brotherhood member, working closely with Ronald "Renegade" Yandell. From a shared cell, they used contraband phones to run heroin and meth trafficking, direct outside associates, and keep Brotherhood business moving like the walls were just bad office decor. The Richardson murder became the center of Sylvester's federal case. The government argued the attack helped Sylvester prove himself to the Aryan Brotherhood and enforce the gang's authority over other white inmates. That made Richardson more than a victim of prison violence. He was turned into a warning. Sylvester's case also showed how modern prison gangs really operate. Not only yard attacks, but phones, drug runners, legal visits, outside helpers, and contraband moving through every weak spot in the system. In April 2024, Sylvester was convicted of murder in aid of racketeering, RICO conspiracy, and drug trafficking charges. That December, he received 2 consecutive life sentences. Not famous like some AB legends, but absolutely dangerous. Number 9. Danny Troxell. On January 26, 1979, in Fresno, California, Danny Troxell proved something ugly. Prison was not going to stop him later, because violence had already put him there. He walked into Greenwood Market with a sawed-off shotgun, demanded money from the register, and when a man tried to wrestle the gun away, Troxell fired. The victim was hit in the chest and died. By July, Troxell had pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and robbery, earning 26 years to life. For most people, that sentence would be the end of the story. For Troxell, it became the beginning of a longer one. Inside California prisons, he was validated as Aryan Brotherhood and spent decades tied to the gang's highest circles. Federal prosecutors later described him as part of the AB's 3-man commission, not a street corner nickname, but a leadership body with influence over disputes, membership, discipline, and, allegedly, whether someone marked by the gang lived or died. The key federal case centered on James Mickey, an Aryan Brotherhood member at Calipatria State Prison. Prosecutors said Mickey had angered the gang by failing to retaliate hard enough and by creating money problems. Wiretaps captured conversations suggesting Troxell approved the murder plot. Law enforcement moved Mickey into protective custody before the hit could happen. After a 9-week federal trial, Troxell was convicted in 2024 of RICO conspiracy and conspiracy to commit murder. In 2025, he received life in federal prison. That is why Troxell belongs in this ranking. He was not just dangerous because of what he did in 1979. He was dangerous because prosecutors said prison became his office. If you were into prison gang history, federal cases, and the kind of stories most people never hear in full, hit subscribe. We're only halfway in, and the names coming next get even heavier. Number 8. Wendell Blue Norris. On May 27, 1981, near Vallejo, California, a chained Aryan Brotherhood prisoner sat in the back of a transport car, and somehow, he had a loaded gun. That prisoner was Wendell Blue Norris, a Folsom inmate with leg irons, belly chains, and apparently more backup than the deputies expected. During the ride from Folsom State Prison to a jail branch in Vallejo, Norris pulled a .22 revolver, pointed it at the officers, and ordered them to keep driving toward San Francisco. He forced them to drop their weapons, threatened to kill them, and tried to turn a routine transfer into an escape. One deputy made the only move left. He crashed the car into a tree. The escape failed, and Norris was convicted on multiple charges, including kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted escape. Part of the kidnapping for extortion conviction was later reversed, but the message was already clear. Even in chains, Blue Norris was not harmless. And that was only one piece of his reputation. Norris was not just another Aryan Brotherhood soldier trying to look tough on the yard. According to prison investigators and later accounts, he became part of the California Aryan Brotherhood's ruling 3-man commission, alongside Bobby Crane and Robert Blinky Griffin. In plain English, that meant he was one of the men who could approve violence instead of simply carrying it out. In 1988, testimony in Los Angeles linked Norris to an alleged plot to get the home addresses of Folsom officers after an AB member was shot by staff. That is what made him dangerous. Norris understood that real prison power didn't stop at the cell door. Number 7. Robert Blinky Griffin. On February 13, 1983 in Temple City, California, the Aryan Brotherhood sent a message outside prison walls. Testify against them, and your family could pay. Richard Barnes was shot dead. He was not a rival inmate. He was the father of Stephen Barnes, a man who had testified against Robert Blinky Griffin. That is why Griffin ranks so high. He was not feared because he was the loudest man on the yard. Prosecutors said he was part of the California Aryan Brotherhood Commission, a 3-man leadership group that approved murders, punished members, and controlled prison business. Basically, management, if your handbook came with shanks and life sentences. Griffin entered California prisons in 1970 after robbery and burglary convictions. Officials validated him as an Aryan Brotherhood member in 1979. By 1982, records say he helped run the California faction from the commission level, where violence was not random. It was policy. The cases tied to Griffin's name show the pattern. Stephen Clark was allegedly killed for disrespecting high-ranking AB members. Richard Andreasen was targeted after giving information to law enforcement. Thomas Lamb was killed after failing to carry out a murder order. Arthur Ruffo was later strangled, and testimony said it was done for Griffin and John Stinson. Prosecutors said the nickname Blinky meant a man could be killed with the blink of his eye. That may sound like prison mythology until you see the paperwork. In 2007, Griffin was convicted in a federal RICO case and sentenced to life without parole. He was not just muscle. He was approval, discipline, and punishment in human form. Number 6. Paul Cornfed Schneider. On January 26, 2001, in a San Francisco apartment hallway, Diane Whipple was killed by 2 massive Presa Canario dogs. The darker part was where the trail led, back to Paul Cornfed Schneider, an Aryan Brotherhood inmate locked inside Pelican Bay State Prison. Schneider was not a loudmouth looking scary. Authorities described him as a validated AB member and a high-ranking shot caller, the kind of prisoner who could move orders and favors through walls built to stop exactly that. Before the dog case hit the news, he was already serving time for robbery, aggravated assault, and attempted murder. Federal records later tied him to meth smuggling and a robbery connected to the 1995 killing of Sonoma County Deputy Frank Trejo. Then came the bizarre outside operation. From Pelican Bay, Schneider and another AB inmate, Dale Breches, were linked to a plan to breed Presa Canarios under names like Doggo War. San Francisco lawyers Robert Noel and Marjorie Knoller became so wrapped up in Schneider's world that they adopted him on paper. That is not courtroom strategy. That is a bar license, driving straight into a ditch. Bain and Hara were kept in their apartment building, despite warnings, complaints, and a veterinarian saying the dogs were a serious liability. Schneider was not charged in Diane Whipple's death, but his name was tied to the chain of decisions that pushed that danger outside prison walls. And the ending is prison gang irony. After the media storm, Schneider said the Aryan Brotherhood marked him for death. In AB life, retirement does not come with paperwork. It comes with a target. Number 5. Christopher Overton Gibson. On March 13, 1990, in the Central District of California, Christopher Overton Gibson was accused of playing one of the ugliest roles in Aryan Brotherhood violence. Not just ordering an attack, not just hearing about one, but holding Jeffrey Barnett in place while another inmate repeatedly stabbed him. Barnett survived, but the reason behind the hit tells you how the brand worked. Federal prosecutors said Barnett had been marked after his wife refused to smuggle drugs into a California prison. Years later, Barry Mills allegedly ordered the job finished, and Gibson was one of the men put on it. That is not street corner chaos. That is prison gang management with a knife attached. Gibson was never as famous as Mills or Tyler Bingham, but court records tied him to the Aryan Brotherhood's federal leadership structure. He was described as overseeing the gang's security department. In regular life, security checks locks. In the Aryan Brotherhood, it meant discipline, fear, and making sure orders did not become optional. On April 8, 1997, Gibson was accused again, this time in the attempted stabbing murder of Michael Nevergall, a prisoner who had reportedly insulted the Aryan Brotherhood. Later that same year, Gibson appeared in the message chain connected to the Lewisburg prison race war, where 2 inmates were killed and another was wounded. In 2006, Gibson was convicted in the major federal RICO case against Aryan Brotherhood leaders. He was not the loudest name in the brand. He was worse in a quieter way, the trusted middleman between an order and the violence that followed. Number 4. Ronald Yandell. On August 12, 2015, at California State Prison, Sacramento, Hugo Pinnell walked onto the yard as one of the most infamous inmates in California history. Moments later, he was attacked and killed. But prosecutors said the most dangerous man in that story wasn't standing over him on the yard. He was Ronald Dean Yandell, an Aryan Brotherhood leader already buried under a 65 years to life murder sentence. That is what makes Yandell different. He was not just another violent inmate with a reputation. Federal prosecutors said he helped run Aryan Brotherhood business from inside prison, using contraband cell phones, moving drugs, discussing membership, and directing violence like the prison was his office, and everybody else was just badly paid staff. Yandell's record was already heavy before the federal case. In 2001, in El Sobrante, California, he was accused of shooting 3 people, killing 2. In 2004, he was convicted of first-degree murder and voluntary manslaughter. Prison should have been the end of his reach. Instead, prosecutors said it became his command center. In the Aryan Brotherhood racketeering case, Yandell was convicted of murder in aid of racketeering for the Pinnell killing, plus RICO conspiracy, drug trafficking charges, and multiple murder conspiracies, involving targets like Kenneth Johnson, James Mickey, Paul Diaz, Michael Tripp, and Doug Maynard. Prosecutors said violence was not random in his world. It was discipline, promotion, and control. In December 2024, Yandell received 2 consecutive life sentences in federal court. Some inmates are dangerous because of what they do with their own hands. Yandell was dangerous because prosecutors said he could turn a prison cell, a phone, and a gang hierarchy into a murder machine. Before we enter the top 3, make sure you're subscribed. These final names were not just violent inmates. Prosecutors described them as men who could move orders, start wars, and turn locked cells into command centers. Number 3. Thomas, Terrible Tommy, Silverstein. On October 22, 1983, at USP Marion, Illinois, Thomas, Terrible Tommy Silverstein was handcuffed, escorted by officers, and locked inside one of the toughest federal prisons in America. And somehow, he still turned a shower walk into an ambush. As he passed another cell, inmate Randy Gomez allegedly helped remove his cuffs and handed him a homemade knife. Moments later, Officer Merle Klutz was fatally stabbed in the hallway. That was not Silverstein's first killing behind bars. It was the one that made the Bureau of Prisons realize they had a different kind of problem. Silverstein entered federal custody in 1978 on a 15-year bank robbery sentence. Inside Leavenworth and Marion, he became tied to the Aryan Brotherhood, and federal court records described him as part of the gang's 3-man commission. In plain English, he was not just a violent inmate, he was leadership. In 1981, Silverstein and Clayton Fountain were convicted in the killing of Robert Chappelle, a murder linked to Aryan Brotherhood politics and its alliance with the Mexican Mafia. In 1982, Silverstein was convicted again for killing Raymond Cadillac Smith, a leader of the DC Blacks, during a brutal prison gang conflict. By the time Officer Klutz was killed, Silverstein was already serving life. More time meant almost nothing to him, which is exactly what made him terrifying to prison officials. After Marion, he spent decades under extreme isolation and later ended up at ADX Florence. Silverstein died in 2019, but his legacy remained simple and ugly. He was one of the inmates who proved America needed a prison inside the prison. Number 2. Tyler Davis, the Hulk, Bingham. On August 14, 1997, inside the federal Supermax system in Florence, Colorado, Tyler Davis Bingham helped prove a terrifying point. Even a locked cell can still start a prison war. Prosecutors said Bingham, known as the Hulk, sent a coded message approving war with the DC Blacks. Days later, at USP Lewisburg in Pennsylvania, that order helped trigger a coordinated attack. Frank Joyner and Abdul Salam were killed, and several other inmates were stabbed. Bingham was not just some loud Aryan Brotherhood soldier trying to look tough on the yard. He sat on the AB's Federal Commission, the small leadership circle that could approve hits, prison wars, and death sentences inside the gang. In normal life, that would be called management. In the Aryan Brotherhood, it meant deciding who might not make it through the week. His record was already ugly: robbery, armed bank robbery, escape, and violent prison conduct. But his real danger was organizational. Federal evidence showed AB leaders moved orders through coded letters, hidden writing, and outside messengers, turning mail into a weapon. Bingham was also tied to the murder of Arva Lee Ray, an AB member killed after violating the gang's internal rules. That case showed the Brotherhood's code clearly. Enemies could be targeted, but members could be erased too. In 2006, Bingham was convicted in a major federal RICO case involving Aryan Brotherhood murders and racketeering. The jury spared him from death, but he received life in prison. The Hulk was dangerous, not because he was loud, but because he could make violence happen from a concrete box. Number 1. Barry the Baron Mills. On August 28, 1997, inside USP Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, inmate Frank Joyner was playing Monopoly when Aryan Brotherhood members moved in. Minutes later, Joyner and another inmate, Abdul Salam, were dead. That alone was disturbing. But prosecutors said the real shock was where the order came from, not Lewisburg, but from men locked down hundreds of miles away in Florence, Colorado. One of them was Barry Byron Mills, known as the Baron. Mills was not famous because he was loud, reckless, or trying to look scary for the cameras. His danger was quieter than that. Prosecutors described him as part of the Aryan Brotherhood's top leadership, a man with enough authority to help approve violence, settle internal problems, and turn prison politics into death sentences. His criminal life started early. In 1969, Mills went to San Quentin after an armed robbery conviction. In 1976, he was tied to a major bank robbery in Fresno, where more than $100,000 was taken. But prison did not slow him down. It gave him a network. In 1979, at USP Atlanta, inmate John Sherman Marsloff was killed in what prosecutors described as an Aryan Brotherhood contract hit connected to a drug dispute. Years later, Mills became a lead defendant in the massive federal case against the Brotherhood. The government said coded messages, hidden communication, and strict gang rules helped keep the machine running even from maximum security. Nice try, prison system. In 2007, Mills received 4 consecutive life sentences. For most inmates, prison ends a career. Prosecutors said Barry Mills built one there. So now, we've gone through 13 Aryan Brotherhood leaders, 13 stories of prison power, coded orders, violence, betrayal, and life sentences. But let's be clear. None of this is cool. A gang does not make you powerful. It uses you, replaces you, and forgets you the moment you become a problem. These men did not beat the system. Most of them only built a smaller cage inside the one they already had. So, tell me in the comments, which name shocked you the most, and who really deserved the #1 spot? Subscribe for more prison gang deep dives, and watch this next video, because prison power does not end with this list. Before we end, listen to this warning from a former high-ranking gang leader, because nobody explains the cost of that life better than someone who actually survived it.
Your family will die, your brothers and sisters will die, your parents will die, and you won't be there with them. And it's all for something you don't even own. A street, a territory, a gang, the barrio. You don't own it. You're killing for it and you're dying for it.